Morning, everybody. Good Saturday morning to all of you. Happy New Year to everyone, and thank you for joining us for today's Dave School Virtual Open House and ZBrush seminar. I think you guys are going to enjoy the day. I think you guys are in for a real treat. I want to introduce myself for some of you who may not know me. My name is Nick Tallata. I am the Director of Admissions here at the Dave School. Some of you folks, in looking at the names who are participating, I have had the pleasure of meeting you guys, so I want to welcome you guys. I think we also have some students who are already enrolled to our school, which is fantastic and great to see. I'm going to be turning over the first half of the presentation to my good friend, Mr. Mike Young. Mike is one of our instructors here at the Dave School. He is going to start off with the ZBrush tutorial. Mike's going to run about 45 minutes to an hour. If you want to hold off on any questions till like 10:45 or so, Mike will be more than happy to answer those for you. After Mike is done, then I am going to give everyone an overview of the Dave School for those of you who are interested in what we have to offer and what we teach and how we prepare our students for career success. And I'm also going to share with you some examples of student work too, so you get an idea of the quality of work that our students do put out here. If anybody on this presentation is still in high school, if you could do me the favor and just type your name and the year of graduation, 21, 22, I would appreciate that as well. So without any further ado, I'm going to give Mr. Michael Young the
now unmuted.
Come and let him take over the presentation. Michael, take it away, sir.
Hi, how's everybody doing? First, I'll go over a little bit about who I am. Not only am I a Dave School instructor, but I work for a company called Infinitec. And if you've seen the movie Ready Player One, they developed the treadmill that is in that movie. I am their lead Unreal developer, and I also
Mike,
teach...
I don't know that we can hear you, sir.
Oh, you can't hear me? Am I not audible? Oh no, what happened?
You are now muted. You are now unmuted.
Am I still not audible? Hello?
Mike, can you hear me?
I can.
We can't. I can't hear you.
Alright. What happened?
Can anybody else hear Michael? Looks like we can't hear you, Mike. Okay, so Mike's going to log out and log back in. And we're going to give this another.
Check, check. Hello, hello, hello. Check, check.
Piece of equipment. It allows you to strap on an Oculus headset and basically give you the version of as if you're in free flight or moving. The military's using it for applications. You can use it to do some virtual rock climbing and things like that. So it's really cool.
Can you hear me?
Say it again, Mike.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, you might want to pump up your volume a little bit.
Let me, I didn't realize my VR headset keeps hijacking my audio.
Okay. I can hear you good now.
Let's see if I can get that a little louder. How's that?
There you go. I'm going to turn it back over to you, bud.
All right.
Okay, sir.
All right, everybody can hear me now, huh? All right. A little bit about who I am. Not only am I a Dave School instructor, I also work for Infinitec. We're the company that developed the treadmill that you see in the movie Ready Player One. I am their Unreal developer. That's what I look like. I own squirrels. Well, squirrels own me, actually. I've worked on several feature films. I've worked on a couple of video games. One of them is Lord of the Rings Online. And that's my beautiful wife. I'll show you a little bit of my work, and then we'll get right into messing around with some ZBrush. I'm a traditional artist as well, but I really do love digital stuff. So this is some of my first ZBrush hard surface stuff. A little bit more of my traditional stuff. And we'll be playing around with a head sculpt today, much like the one that just passed. I also worked for a company called Megaton making toys, which was really fun. But we'll probably do something more along these lines today. Maybe not this detailed. Here's the toy concepts that I worked from when I made this guy. And that's the toy sheet we ended up with. They were fun projects. So that's some of my work. I know I scanned through it pretty quick, but when I work, I tend to work from reference. I have a slew of reference that I've made for myself, and I will share all this reference with you in the videos that I share after I'm done running my mouth. But I don't know what, I mean, I know what these things are, but I never remember them. I don't remember that this is the helix or this is the triangular fossa. So I made me some charts to show me. But if you know this stuff's there, your sculpting will just be better for it. So when I'm working, I always have some kind of reference up. It's just going to be on a different screen. So we're going to be using ZBrush Mini Core today. And it's like a trimmed down version of ZBrush. It has a handful of tools that are really just designed for sculpting. And I use these same tools pretty much anytime I'm doing any kind of sculpting. Before we get into it, I'll cover the user interface and how to navigate the 3D space. So over here on the left, you can open and save a project. These two buttons right here will allow you to switch between the sphere or a cube. I'm going to use a sphere. This is your symmetry. So with symmetry on and with symmetry off, I'm going to leave symmetry on for now. This is our draw size. And if you look at your keyboard, you got your open brackets and your closed brackets will do the same thing for you. I tend to use the open and closed brackets the most when I'm adjusting my brush size. So if you see my brush just growing, it's the open brackets, or if it's just shrinking, it's the closed brackets. Right here's the intensity at which we'll sculpt. I'm going to jump over to the right real quick and hit this little button over here. And that shows you the polygons. So right now it's at low. You can adjust this to medium or high. I don't have anything sculpted, so it's not going to do anything. But we'll get back to that. When I'm done, I can export an image, or I can export an OBJ or an STL for 3D printing. And right here, it'll take you to ZBrush Central, or where you can upgrade to Core ZBrush. Off to the right, we have a handful of tools that are going to allow us to navigate our 3D viewport. So right here is perspective, and when we have something sculpted, this will be a little bit more obvious. Right here we can move the canvas around, we can zoom in and out, and we can rotate. And you'll notice this little guy up here is doing all kinds of stuff. If I've zoomed in or if I've zoomed out and I can't find my stuff, I can hit this little frame button and it'll frame the object back in there. As far as keyboard commands, I use keyboard commands the most. If I want to rotate, I just click an empty space and I can drag and rotate. If I want to snap to a view, like the front view or the side view, I can press Shift while I'm rotating. If I press and hold Alt and left click and drag around, I can move the object around in the viewport. But if I'm holding the left mouse button down and I let go of the Alt button, I can now zoom in and out. Again, I press Alt, press the left mouse button and drag to move it around. And then if I let go of the Alt button while holding that left mouse button down, I can zoom in and out. And if I just press the F key, that'll also frame the object. Over here on the left, I have my brush palette. So I've got a standard brush, clay buildup brush, inflate, pinch, move, snake hook, slash, and polish. By default, it's set for your standard brush. The clay buildup brush might be my favorite brush. It's like laying down a strip of clay. Now while I'm laying down clay, it's pushing it out, so you can see that it's actually moving it outward. If I press Alt and sculpt, it's going to carve in. Now if I wanted to smooth, I would press Shift, and then I can just smooth all this stuff out. Now something's happening when we start sculpting. And if I push this button again, you'll notice that my polygons are changing now. So as I'm sculpting, the thing that's happening is called dynamic tessellation. And it's intuitively taking the polygons and reducing them or enlarging them based on your brush size. So if I make this big, you might not notice it until I smooth. When I'm carving or sculpting, it might, yeah, they're bigger. But it's all based on your brush size. Hopefully everybody sees that and understands what I'm getting at. Let me just clear that. So what's happening is it's taking the polygons, dynamically tessellating them, and moving them along their surface normals. What I mean by surface normals is each polygon has a direction. So you also have vertices. Do a little bit of the nerd stuff real quick. So the normals for these vertices are all pointing outward. So your surface normal is also pointing outward. So let's say we have a surface like this. So my normals would be pointing like that. Does that make sense to everybody what a surface normal is doing? Okay. So now when I sculpt, it's going to move them. The inflate brush is going to do the same thing, so it's going to move everything on its surface normal. It just does it slightly different. So there's a little bit different math going on under there. The clay buildup brush is using something called an alpha. So it's a black and white image. And the area that I sculpt, and you'll see it right here, is square. So it's using a square to move that rather than the actual brush shape. And they all work slightly different. The pinch brush is going to pull up, or I'm sorry, push out and then pull in towards the center of the brush. If I push Alt, it's going to carve in. And again, all based on the size of the brush. I use the move brush a lot as well. Let's see. So the move brush just allows you to take an area and just move it. So there's a couple cool things that happen with the move brush. If you press the Alt key, it's going to lock that motion along the surface normals. I'm sorry, I'm having a hard time talking today. I need more coffee, maybe. But if you press the Alt key and you move left or right, it's just going to move those polygons or that surface along its normal, but it's going to be locked to that normal. Snake hook brush is fun. I use the snake hook brush a lot when I'm making stuff like trees, horns, mustaches. The slash brush is great for a lot of stuff. So the polish brush kind of does a flatten and smooth kind of thing. It's really good for hard surface stuff, but it's one of those ones that takes a little bit of getting used to. If you have a pretty flat surface, it'll round it off along the corners, but it'll also kind of polish and remove any kind of weird issues slightly different than the smoothing happens. So we could talk about it all day, but it's a little nicer to see it all in action. Before I move on to sculpting, though, you can change your color and your materials right here. I'm going to stick with this standard gray. It's the one that I think works the best for me. But let's go ahead and get started unless there's any questions about the interface. So I'm just adjusting my brush size. And again, I've got some reference up. So I tend to use these guys. Now with ZBrush, you can throw this into the background. With ZBrush Mini Core, you just have to have some reference somewhere on a different screen, printed out in front of you. So I'm just going to jump over to the Move tool. Just kind of move this thing down into that standard head shape. I'm just going to move. And I just kind of push stuff into place. And I jump right into the clay brush. Now I'm going to put a few things in place right off the bat. And I like to have this little area right here for the eyes carved in. I think I'm going to put them right about here. I'm going to give myself an area for the nose. I'm just going to rough it in. I'm not really worried about how it looks right now. I might carve in the eye sockets a little bit. I'll go ahead and carve in this little area that I like to call the barrel of the mouth. I'll put in a little bit of a chin. And I'm probably going to put the cone of the ears like right about here. Now, if I don't like something, I can move it. So the nose, I'm going to probably, let's push this back some. Let's pull that nose out. Let's pull that out some. And then I'll jump back in and I'll do some carving in. So the thing you just saw is something that happens a lot. ZBrush kind of remembers a point in space where it was last done every once in a while, and you'll go to push something and it'll draw a line from that point. It's just a thing that happens because of memory. Just undo it. I'm going to put that barrel of the mouth back in there a little more. And I think I'm going to pull in some of these, carve in this little area for the cheek. I'm going to do my jawline. I'm going to carve out some of this right here. And let's just kind of get this area. And I'm just kind of carving in the areas of detail that I might want here in a little bit, and then I'll go in and I'll smooth them all out, just pressing the shift key. And I don't care if I lose everything, I can always put it back. Maybe I'll carve in I'll go ahead and put in my eyebrows, or that brow prominence from the skull. And I'll smooth it out again. If I don't like something, I just carve it back out, smooth it back over. So I have the shape of the head that I'm starting to be happy with. Let me smooth this out real quick before we get too far into this. And then maybe I'll jump over to this slash brush and I will carve in a place for that mouth. I'll press the Alt key and I'll shape that upper lip. Just carving out a little bit so that I can put this lower lip in there, but it's a little misshapen, so I'm going to go back in with the clay brush and I'm going to shape this area a little more to match the muscle structure that happens underneath. I'll smooth it out, and then I'll go back in there and fix anything that I need to fix as I'm sculpting. I'm going to pull these cheeks out some, just to get a little better shape on it. And then I'll smooth them out. Let's go in, and I always do a more realistic head. I think I'm going to have a little fun today and maybe do something more cartoony. So I'll play around with the ball of the nose, and I just jump around, and you'll notice that I'm looking at it from all kinds of angles. I'm not focused on one angle. Let's switch over to the move tool. And just move things together, space them out. And I can do the same thing with the ears as well. I can just grab that, start moving that around. I think I like that for the shape of the ears, so I'll go in with a bit smaller brush and I'll start working on that bit of cartilage that goes around the outside of the ear and just build that up. So I'm moving pretty quick. Normally I would spend a little bit more time in some of these areas. Sometimes the shift button doesn't always work. I'll just tweak stuff into a space that I'm happy with. I want more on top of that ear. That'll work there. So maybe I need to define the area right here in between the lips. Let's give them some nostril holes. Use that slash brush to kind of define that area right there between the nostrils and the top part of the lip. And I'll just jump back and forth between those brushes. Maybe I'll switch to the pinch brush and tighten that area in there. And then maybe switch back to that slash brush and kind of push it back in. Now, I want to move that lip out, but instead of getting caught up on that, I'll just kind of work on it as I go, because I'll probably smooth that back out as I'm working on this thing. but maybe I'll move it. Now, one of the areas that I tend to kind of glaze over is the corners of the mouth. Like right now it's kind of flat mouthed. So I might press that Alt key, find a spot in here. Maybe my brush is too big. Or just push these back. And that gives me that area. Let me see. That gives me this area right here. But it pushes that area back to match and to be more in line with the skull. I didn't draw a skull. But it's the palate of the mouth. So more of this shape rather than a flat shape. Hopefully that makes sense. And you know, I can start pushing some of this back. Maybe I can get some of this a little more forward. Get that back some. Pull some of these muscles out underneath the chin. Let's move that out. So then I'll go back in with that slash brush. Let's see. Pull that out some so that it matches the muscle structure that's laying underneath there. And remember, the size of my brush is determining how most of this stuff kind of works. So I'll get in there and smooth it out. I'll push it in, smooth it out. Maybe I'll turn Symmetry off at some point and kind of get some variation in there. Are there any questions up to this point? Now, in ZBrush Core Mini, no. It's kind of one of those things. They gave it out for free, so that's cool. That's kind of why we're using it, so everybody can kind of mess around with it. But it's designed to just be like one hunk of clay that you can sculpt on. With ZBrush Core and ZBrush, you can add as many primitives as you want. It's one of the few limitations that ZBrush Mini Core has. But again, it's designed really just to get a feel for sculpting. But let's say you wanted to add a neck because he's just a floating head. I'm going to use the clay buildup brush, and real quick I'm going to finish sculpting out this area so that when I start pulling them out. So I'm going to do Let's say his neck is right about here. Now, the question that you're asking, that's kind of how I usually attack stuff in ZBrush, in the actual full version of ZBrush. It's kind of fun to do that kind of stuff, and you can quickly get your shapes in. But with this, we just have to kind of deal with what we got. I'm going to sculpt this out a little more because I don't want to grab the back of the head. So let me just grab... That should give me enough to play with. And anything I mess up, I'll just fix here in a minute. And if at any point in time you feel like you're stretching stuff too much, you just jump over that clay build-up brush and just kind of get in there and go right over top of that, and it'll change the structure for you so that you're not getting those stretches. So I'll just get in here and sculpt in that throat, the voice box. I'm going to turn that off real quick. And I'm going to start moving stuff again. Oh yeah, I'm a huge Blender fan. Actually, the studio I work at for Infinidec is all Blender. The school uses Maya, but once you learn to use a 3D modeling program, animation package like Blender or Maya, there's a little secret. The three things that can help you transition from one piece of software to another is learn how to navigate 3D space, learn the terminology of the tools. So like here in ZBrush, I'm using a clay build-up brush to bulk stuff out. But in Blender, you would extrude or bevel or chamfer. It's all the same kind of stuff. So you're extruding geometry by pulling it out. You're beveling edges by splitting the edge or splitting the vertice. And if you understand what you're trying to do in one 3D package, if you're learning another, like let's say Maya, you need to know what hotkeys do what, and you need to know what tools do what. So if you already know one 3D package, you kind of know them all. Does that make sense? Right on. Okay, so character modeling is one of those things that just depends on the modeler and the project. I have a friend of mine that actually used to be a modeling instructor at the Dave School. His name's William Vaughn. He box models everything. Box modeling's fun for me, but I'm quicker at sculpting and doing a method called the build-out method. So it really just depends on the way you want to tackle your models. Cartoony stuff is probably easier to box model. Photorealistic stuff for me is I'm pretty quick at it just by sculpting. But I think it's a preferred method. You know, once you learn a handful of ways to tackle things, it's going to really depend on what you want to do. So box modeling is you take a box and then you extrude or divide, you bevel, split loops, and you basically just use that box. Build out method is you might start with a polygon and work your way around the eye and then mirror that and then connect it and then build out around the mouth so that you have your loops already in place. Just depends on how you want to tackle stuff. I was a traditional artist before I got into 3D. So sculpting came very natural to me. I worked on a project, I'd say back in 2008 for Land Before Time, and I box modeled all of the stuff that I did for that project. Working with Lord of the Rings, I did build-out method. So it really just depends on how you want to tackle stuff. No, if you get into game design, it might benefit you to have a little bit of coding knowledge, but it's not required for being an asset artist, or if you're environment artist or character artist. It's more for level design stuff, and I mean, it's a lot of fun, don't get me wrong. Now, when I worked, I did actually just recently work on the Millennium Falcon ride, and I sculpted everything I did for the new Star Wars stuff. So I'm not going to really go much further with this guy. Well, I'll put in some eyes here real quick. Just going to get a shape. Maybe put some of that meat in there that happens underneath the eyebrow. I draw a lot on paper. That helps me work out shapes in 3D, actually. That's been one of my saving graces. If I can't figure something out by looking at a reference, I'll draw it, and I'll try to draw it a couple different directions or angles. And it's really helped a lot, actually. I recommend, even if you're not that great at sketching, sketch everything. It's just going to give you a better perspective on stuff. I try to get my hands on as many mediums as possible, actually. If I can get a giant hunk of clay, I'll get it. If I only have charcoal sitting around, I'll just do stuff with charcoal. It never hurts to experiment in other mediums. It's always good to get a different perspective. I hope you guys had some fun today. I always have fun doing this stuff. I mean, they're quick, loose, putting stuff in places real quickly just to have some fun. Yeah. Yeah, time goes by quick when you're enjoying yourself. We have a lot of fun at the Dave School. You get to make all kinds of neat stuff. We get to blow things up digitally. It's a lot of fun. In the game class, we do go over a tiny bit of coding. It's mostly Blueprint, which is a visual representation of C++. Ah, Nico, you've been to the Dave School. Did I say your name right? Yeah, it's a lot of fun. I've really enjoyed working at the Dave School. I for some reason tend to keep going back there. I'll get a job working somewhere else, and then I'll have some free time. And they've always been gracious enough to let me come back and play around with all the cool tools that they've got. Before I go and hand you back over to Nick, did anybody have any more questions for me?
And Mike, just to reiterate, you're going to send me the link so I can send it out to everybody of today's presentation, correct, sir?
Yeah, or if you'd like, I can just pop back in and share it in the chat.
Yeah, that'd be great. That way everybody can grab it and take it with them today.
Okay, I will do that. Well, Nick, I will hand you back over the presenter.
All right. Thank you, Mike. I appreciate it.
It was my pleasure, and thank you, everybody, for hanging out with me.
Thank you, Mike. You have a great day. And hopefully for some of you folks, you'll have the opportunity to be in Mike's class down the road. He does a wonderful job, and I can't thank him enough for taking time out of his day to share a little bit of what our students learn here at the Dave School.